According to a recent poll, no more than 21% of Americans have a very favorable attitude to capitalism, which means that more Americans are convinced that they have experienced a ghost than the benefits of capitalism. The fashionable narrative today is that free trade failed us during the pandemic, and that neoliberalism, whatever that is dead. So, has capitalism failed? As a slightly amusing response to the question, how is your husband, goes, compared to what? We've had 20 horrible years. We've experienced financial crises, chaos in the Middle East, the COVID-19 pandemic, and now a massive war in Europe. And yet, these 20 horrible years have also been the 20 best years in human history, when looking at objective indicators of human living standards. Around a third of all the wealth that mankind has ever attained was produced over these past 20 years. Global extreme poverty was reduced by more than 130,000 people every day over 2 decades. Child mortality was almost cut in half, which means that last year 4 million children fewer died than in 2002. And at the same time, global inequality was reduced for the first time since the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the West. It has not been perfect in any way, just the best. Compared to what? Well, any other era and every other system. And one reason for this progress is that, contrary to popular perceptions, free markets and free trade adapts better to unexpected problems and disasters. During the pandemic, when businesses suddenly lacked a large part of their workforce and important input goods, they managed to tweak manufacturing and distribution to put food back on the shelves and reduce the devastating shortages that everybody expected. And who adapted the quickest? Well, counterintuitively, businesses and countries with complex supply chains did. They were used to thinking about options, in investing in alternatives, and they could always find a producer in a place that wasn't under lockdown at that particular moment. Most problems affect a particular region, and if you have all the production you depend on there, when troubles hit, it's game over. As America found out after having repatriated all the production of infant formula. Then all it took was problems in one factory in the spring of 2022 to create a national shortage. That's why the old saying does not go, put all your eggs in one basket and protect it with tariffs. Others say that capitalism is just for the powerful and the wealthy, the 1%. That's nonsense. Capitalism is a system of cooperation and exchange, where no deal ever happens unless both parties think that they benefit from them. That's remarkable. All previous systems, slavery, feudalism, colonialism, socialism, were built on the idea that to get resources you plunder others. In capitalism, to get rich, you have to enrich others. Therefore, profit is usually a sign of progress. It's what you get if a business has been able to create value for its customers and then pay its suppliers, pay its lenders, and pay its employees. Then and only then, if they get something left, that's the profit. Profits are not something they take away from others. It's what they get to keep from the value they create for others. And the growth it makes possible is most important for those who have the least. The share of a nation's wealth that goes to the poorest tenth of the population does not differ much depending on how free the economy is. The whole difference comes from the fact that free economies are so much better at generating wealth. So even if the poorest share of the pie is not much larger, the pie is. Which means that in the freest quarter of countries, the income of the poorest is more than 8 times bigger than in the least free economies. And those who fall below the poverty line in the United States now has a larger chance of owning amenities like dishwashers, washing machines, dryers, air conditioners, television sets, and obviously computers and cell phones than the average American did in 1970. In historical terms, We are all part of the 1%, if we have a bathroom. As late as 1950, almost a third of American households did not have a flush toilet. Over the long run, economic growth means such a huge improvement of all our living standards that any kind of redistribution seems trivial by comparison. But more than trivial, it can be dangerous if it undermines the incentives to work hard, to innovate and to take risks. You see, prosperity is not piles of cash lying around in money bins. It's a process whereby we make things a little bit better, cheaper and faster tomorrow than we did today. And that takes constant work. If we stopped generating wealth and tried to live off all the accumulated wealth of the world, all of it would be gone in 5 years. Capitalism creates growth because it allows more people to look for it. In a decentralized system, we use more ideas and talent. And as the saying goes in programming, with a sufficient number of eyeballs looking at code, every bug can be fixed. This is why the fashionable ideas about government intervention has such a long and disappointing track record. They're all just ways of replacing the wisdom of billions of people and all their local experiments with the preferences of a few people at the top who do not even risk their own money. Price controls created shortages. Tariffs destroyed jobs and purchasing power. And attempts to take the taxpayers' money to second-guess their decisions systematically created losers, from old steel plants and shipyards to the Franco-German supersonic airliner Concorde and corn-based ethanol. And do you remember Quero? Of course you don't, but this was the proud German-French plan to build a European Google with the taxpayers' money. They just knew that this was the way to own the digital future, and it all collapsed within a year. The industrial policy activists of the left and the right who think that they represent a new and exciting line of thought would just be repeating all those costly mistakes. Of course, there are major problems left to be solved. Global warming, for example. But degrowth, doing less, is not the solution. We learned that during the pandemic. The whole world shut down. All the flights were grounded and production and trade was blocked. How much did this reduce total carbon dioxide emissions in 2020? By no more than 6%, at a terrible cost to human lives and the economy. So if we were to achieve the Paris Climate Accords until 2030 by doing less, we would need one pandemic like this every year until then. Another way is needed, and we can already see its beginning. In the past decade, around 40 countries have managed to grow their economies and reduce carbon dioxide emissions through energy efficiency and green technology. And they just so happens to be some of the richest and freest economies on the planet. We need more experiments and more innovation to solve this and all the other problems that face humanity. And we need trade and globalization to spread the best solutions around the world. That's why capitalism, by unleashing the creativity of billions, has the best track record and still offers the best hope for humanity.